Recording in progress.
Okay. I will call the meeting to order. Will someone do a roll call?
Yes, Bonnie,
Yeah.
Scott, absent, Robert, absent, Patrick, absent, Margaret, here, Jerry,
Here.
Christina, here. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Christina to a full member to fill, one of the vacancies.
Yes. And, Margaret makes a motion when there's a member absent, the alternate can become a full member, and we almost need her to become one to have a quorum. So does anyone want to second the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay.
Okay.
So you're.
Now you can
Well,
vote.
yes, now you can vote. You're a full voting member. Okay, approval of the minutes, and we have a July 11th set, an August 8th set. There are no September and October sets because we didn't have a quorum, we didn't have a meeting, and a November 1 set. So it's been back to July since we've had difficulties here. Have you guys read them, or, and we have an issue too, because you weren't here. Oh, you weren't here for any of them.
No,
Well.
Well, we were here for a couple.
November,
I was here.
but not as
Not as a member.
Remember,
All right, well, we're not gonna be able to approve the minutes, except the November 1. So, Well-
Approve the November 1st minutes with the one correction that we, fixed Christina's name.
okay, and that was the meeting that we appointed. Right? Yes. They weren't a member until after the meeting. We're gonna do them. Let's keep, we'll carry them, we'll carry the minutes
Carry
forward
forward.
until we
Okay.
have a clear, quorum of folks that would have been present. Selectmen's report, he is not here, so we do not have one. We now have a staff, a town employee, secretary. And, she can't be here tonight, unfortunately, so Margaret is going to, fill in those duties. So we will have, does anybody want to serve as, vice chair? Or do we wait until we have more members here? And do we have a member of the board to be a secretary? Not necessarily, we don't have to. Right?
I don't think we need to have a member.
We don't have to have-
continue to be a secretary.
So, we don't need, to appoint a board member secretary because we have a staff member secretary. So, we could elect a vice chair, tonight, or we could wait until there's more members present. Margaret, I think has expressed some interest in being vice chair. I don't know if you want to go forward with
I'll second it.
nominating, Margaret vice chair.
I'll nominate Margaret.
Okay,
Vice chair.
is there a second? Second it, all right, all in favor? Aye, I abstain. And you abstain, and you will accept the position? I guess so. You said one time you would be willing. If you want to serve as chair,
I will.
all right, okay.
Now you ask,
Well, she mentioned it one time, she didn't want to be secretary anymore.
I've heard the
Right.
train, running in the beginning of the meeting here, so.
Okay, budget approval, we need to, approve a budget. Judy in the corner office needs a budget, and we've been trying to get one for all this time. I asked her, I'll show you what we've had for a budget, over the last few years. Here, I don't know if I got extra copies, but at any rate, the budget for last year was planning board payroll, 5,000. And we've only spent because we didn't have a staff secretary, and Margaret has helped us out and received some stipends. But out of the $5,000, we have $4,525 left. But with a paid secretary, we're gonna need the 5,000 next year, assuming we continue to have a staff secretary. So my suggestion would be to keep that untouched. And we have operating expenses of $1,000. We have left in our operating budget at this point in the year, $81.93. So we probably need the 1,000. Legal fees. We have left $55 of the 1,000. So we probably need at least 1,000. And consultation fees, we haven't spent any.
What fees?
Consultations, we've broken it down into 3 categories: operating expenses and the ability to hire a consultant if we want one. Like you were just saying, we're laymen, we might need to hire an engineer or a consultant to help us out. If we get in over our head, or a subdivision comes along, or a big project or something, excuse me, over and above what we can handle, we might need to hire a consultant. So we might hire North Country Council, for instance. They're in there
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
Okay, we might hire North Country Council to do something for us, and same with the legal expense, things may come up. So does anybody want to make any kind of motion on a budget?
Do you have another copy of that?
I have plenty, yeah,
We have used, some of the legal budget just recently.
right at today, we have $55 of the 1,000 left.
Let me get a copy later.
Okay,
I'm gonna get a couple copies later.
okay, I might have some extras here. Oh, here's one, I got a few extras.
Yeah, I'll do it. Thank you. Right, you're right. So, Judy?
You know,
Okay, we may never.
Right, just want
Keep
you
this with me, so, okay.
to- Judy needs some
That's good.
copies for us.
Aha, here you are.
oh, gosh,
Um,
hard to get out of the store.
and I'm glad we hesitated a minute to hear the presentation, that have as many of us
Thank you.
hear it. All right. You wanna wait for Rex to get back
Yeah,
to copies?
Please, because I want to make
Okay.
notes and stuff on it. So
All right,
Hey,
we can fill in as to what we've done so far.
I think we definitely need to keep the payroll.
yes,
Yeah. It's definitely.
Yeah.
And,
Margaret is now a vice chair. We voted her to be vice
Okay.
chair. Just to get you up to speed,
okay,
as far as what we've done so far this meeting.
okay, good.
We're going over the budget now. Where does the money come from for the budget?
it's town funds, it's a property taxation. You, just like, you vote on it at, town meeting, it's in the budget. Thank you
Thank you very
very much. Anybody in the audience wants one? It's in the town budget that the budget committee works on, and all the department heads can, submit a budget, what they think they need. And, it's grown a little bit because we've added the legal expense and the consultant expense and the potential and the payroll expense. The North Country Council dues, I believe, come out of the selectmen's budget at this point.
Okay, how much are we paying our paid secretary?
I don't know, but I think $30 an hour, I think. But don't quote me on that, I'm not sure.
Does anybody have an idea on how many hours she works per week or per month?
When I was doing the work, it was an average of about $500 a month.
5 or 6 hours a month, so let's say 6 hours a month.
So do we want to come back to this and see if my 7th council is ready for us, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not, and do we have, folks in the audience? Do we have,
There is one person on the phone.
one person on the phone? Okay.
Are you ready for your presentation? Kayla and Michelle?
Hi, everybody. Yes, we definitely are.
Okay, this is good, and I'm glad Diane, got here before you started. This came out of a couple of meetings ago to have North Country Council participate via Zoom to fill us in a bit on what services they have. Fill us in a bit on, master planning, and, planning board duties and so forth. So, you have a slide presentation.
It's supposed to be something that we can do with Zoom television so that everybody can see.
Okay, great. So while you guys are pulling that up, what I'll do is I'll pull up my slides and make sure I have everything ready on my side too.
Okay, we'll get ready here.
Is there a remote over there?
Mhm.
You can't work with the computer?
And are we gonna be able to see it, or we have to go in the audience?
We'll be able to see it here.
Okay.
Want a mirror, reverse
I'm
it?
about as techie as they,
Is it up on your computer?
I'm about as non-techie as they get. No one has
Anything to do
to
anything.
First, it doesn't work good.
It's- it's in the- Oh. That one. Oh, it's on the-
We have brand new equipment here. Everything we have is brand new. Computer, cameras, TV.
That's always exciting and hard at the same time.
Absolutely.
There we
We
go.
finally
Okay.
got in the high tech.
Looks like we've got it.
We finally got in the high tech business. I think we need to go sit out in the audience.
Okay, so I think I have one favor to ask you guys in the room, which is that when I try and click the screen share button to show my presentation, it says the host has to okay it. So if
I think I did that.
I hit this. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Okay, now let me get this to a good view for us. Okay, so are you guys seeing my screen now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So, well, now that I have that up and it's sort of probably harder to see my face, I'm going to say hello and I'm going to give Michelle a chance to say hello as well, and give you guys a little bit of an idea of who we are. So my name is Kayla Tavares. I am one of the planners here at North Country Council. So I'm sort of the boots on the ground staff that works a lot of times with the towns on things like master planning. I've been a planner for going on 15 years now, so I've dabbled in sort of a handful of different disciplines of planning, but I really love planning boards and small town master plans more than about anything. So I'm very happy to be with you guys tonight. And now hand things over to Michelle to say hello.
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, good. I'm on my phone. My Zoom applications were not behaving. So, but yes, I'm the executive director of North Country Council, and we're excited for this opportunity to share a little bit about master plans and our regional planning services. One thing that I would encourage you all is that if you have questions about, planning services or funding opportunities or any other type of planning opportunities or community opportunities, reach out to us, because, if we don't necessarily have the resource, we can definitely get you headed in the right direction towards those resources. And I'll turn it over to Kayla.
Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you guys an overview of what I have in my slides, and then I'm going to tell you that I am happiest when I'm interrupted. So I'm going to try and save plenty of time for questions at the end, but if you have a question along the way, I have no problem being interrupted. Please interrupt me. So what I'm
The slides.
Yep, I think I should be able to advance the slides. So what I'm going to do sort of tonight is I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do for services generally, then I'm going to go into a little bit about what master plans are. So we'll talk big level regional planning and then try and drill it down to what you guys do more at the planning board level and how we can be a support. So I guess that's all on that first slide that I did without looking at it. So we'll skip right over that one. So the way I wanted to kind of, I think, sort of introduce the services we provide at the Regional Planning Commission is to look at it in three sort of ways, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our mission, and then I'm going to talk a little about who we are as the staff, and then who makes up North Country Council. So our mission as a council is always to provide and connect communities with any resources and services that can help them reach their goals that they've sort of set community-wide. They can be local goals, so just within Woodstock. They can be within Woodstock and your immediate neighbors, or they can be sort of larger region-wide goals. We try and do that in a handful of ways, right? We try and do it by providing information. We've got a lot of people who are really good at sort of digging into data and collecting it and putting it to use to kind of inform where you can go in planning projects. And so we really try and have a mission of ours be to put that data to use in making sure that communities get the assistance they want to help them sort of get things done, right? A lot of times, I know from sort of my time as a town planner, sometimes the biggest challenge is just having enough hours in the day to get things done. So sometimes we can just be extra hands to do things. Sometimes we're an expert and sometimes we're just a helper. That being said, we have a few buckets of topics that we are sort of particularly savvy in. We've got a lot of experience in land use planning. So that's those pieces you guys know, subdivision regulations, division of land, building of roads, how we make sure people are getting safely to and from their homes as they get built. We have a lot of experience in transportation planning. So that's things like, how do you plan for your bigger road projects? How do you make sure that you're getting state and federal funding for roads into the town as best you can? And how do you look at sort of the different ways people use roads historically and more recently, right? We look a lot about bike and pedestrian facilities now, trails, things like that all are getting to be a little bit broader of a term, but all in transportation. We also do environmental, economic development work, and we've been doing it for about 40 years. Not myself, that would make me a little bit older than I hopefully look on the screen. But the council itself has been a part of the region for 40 years. And Michelle has been lucky to be a part of that for a long time. Myself a little less long, but definitely happy to be part of that long tradition of planning in the area. Regional planning commissions in general are set by state statute. So in those little notes there in the center under who we are, and you guys are looking at it on the screen. I don't know how big or small it is, but that sort of sets forward the statute in case anybody is a land use planning law interest holder to dig in there and see those statutes specifically about what our duty is to do for the region. North Country Council wears sort of an additional hat I'll mention, which is that we're also an economic development district, which is the sort of formal term to say, in addition to helping with planning issues at large, we get extra resources to help work on economic development. And economic development, I think at this point, I've honed a little bit of a catchphrase I use on it. And more than anything, economic development is how we just improve the lives and livelihoods of people who live and work in the region. So we get to do a little bit of extra work around that in sort of connection with being this economic development district. So that's kind of a little bit about us as a staff and what we have in-house as expertise. Membership wise, the council is actually bigger than that. So the council is made up, our region is actually drawn out in state statute. And we are by far in landmass, the biggest region of all the regional planning commissions. We cover the northern third of the state as one of 9 commissions. So it's a lot of area, but they roughly kind of divided things off population. And so because we're a little more spread out, so is our region. We cover 25 unincorporated places and about 50 municipalities. So big sort of area to call one region, and something that we're always sort of working on is making sure we hear from everybody in all the corners about what's going on, right? What's going on down your way, what's going on up further north, what's going on over to the east. So as a membership-based organization, towns who participate pay in some membership dues to us, and we use those dues to leverage in a whole lot more money. So we bring in federal highways money, economic development administration money, we bring in housing and state level money, and we basically sort of use those dues as funding to go in the pot to help match other dues and bring in a whole bunch of resources that we then bring out to do all this transportation, economic development, land use. Recently, a lot of housing and different kinds of planning with our communities. A lot of that work, because of the way we flex in those grants, we try and do at no cost to the towns, right? By being a member, you can always participate in our economic development work. You can always pick up the phone and call and say, hey, come down and talk to us about something or help us figure out something new. And then we do some work that's more like fee for service work where we dig in really deep into a project in the town. So I'm going to skip slides here and move on so I don't get too bogged down in time. So generally, I'm kind of a picture and sort of how things fit together type of a person. So when I think about what we do at the council, I think about it in kind of these three pieces of a pie that kind of cycle together. We work in planning, which is writing those plans and documents, doing all the research behind them to back them up so that when you try and use a plan to say, do something new in a town or launch a new program or a new idea, you've got really sound research that it's based on. Then we work a lot on engagement, which is basically talking to everybody and anybody in your community about how we get to the vision we set in a lot of our plans. So we can help communities do engagement on your own for something you might be working on, right? If you guys are thinking about doing something new, you might want to reach out to the community and just get the pulse on something. We will do a lot of that survey work for towns and then help them talk through what they find and how to use the results. And then this how to use the results piece, I say falls into this bottom bucket here, technical assistance. And that I think is kind of a big meat of what we do is how do you put that stuff to use, right? Once you've engaged with people and you have the plans, it's sort of the coming together and the doing something that helps you move a vision forward. And so we try and be coaches in a whole lot of different ways to do that technical assistance for towns. Generally speaking, we're always kind of at North Country Council bouncing between these two different scales. We're doing all this kind of planning, engagement, technical assistance work, at the regional level, right? Where we take what we hear at the region and we try and percolate it up and advocate in our state and region-wide plans for what we hear from our communities and our residents. But then we also work at the local level. So there's kind of these two different scales of things we bounce back and forth between. The regional work, which is pretty advocacy heavy sometimes, and then the more local work where we really dig into a topic in the towns and say, what's going on here, what's going on there. And so that's kind of the way we approach the work. So as far as the planning services go, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to focus in on local, right? Because you guys are a local planning board. And so I think that's kind of where to hit things home the most and focus our chat. So I'm going to kind of go through the three parts of this wheel here and highlight in on what we do. So we lead consulting work and we can provide a lot of direct support to municipalities, cities and towns, right? I always use municipalities because we have one city in the region, but we will help develop those master plans. You guys have a relatively fresh master plan from what I see from it, but all those other planning documents too, right? Hazard mitigation plans, capital improvement programs. We are skilled in writing and drafting land use ordinances. So refreshing your subdivision regulations and checking those out, seeing what's in those. Different pieces on environmental ordinances. If you guys have floodplain regulations, things like that you look at, we can do sort of a wide depth of things in that regulation and land use world for towns. Beyond that, we like to try and provide that sort of extra set of hands and expertise on special projects. So we'll help when you guys pick something that you're kind of working on your own, right? If you chose something in your master plan that's of interest to you, like for example, right, the town of Gorham is working on trying to figure out what to do differently with parking in their kind of downtown area so that they can see more like upstairs apartments get built. And when they're doing it, we help them come in and do a little bit of a parking study to figure out how big of an issue is the parking, right? How much needs to be there? And how can you sort of come at this goal with a little bit more ammunition about the data on your parking, right? So we'll dig into those special projects in towns and help scope out some of that planning work. When it comes to engagement, you name it, we'll do it. This is my joke. We actually spent a couple of days at a local transfer station once because we heard that that's where the community really comes together to chit chat about what they care about is when they're sorting recycling on Saturday morning. So we spent a Saturday morning tabling and talking to them about the future of the town, along with the gossip getting exchanged, which was a really, really great time and a way that we heard from people who don't always show up at public meetings when you're working on something as a planning board. So really, we will do kind of anything that really helps collect the voices in your community. And we'll do it through open houses, structured things like focus through those bigger widespread community surveys, interviews, and just key stakeholder analysis when you're trying to work through something, but you got some people who are real sort of sway influencers in town who you kind of need to know where they stand on it to get a real understanding of how to move it forward. We'll kind of dig in anywhere on engagement. Engagement is something that we think is fun and best done creatively, so we're open for anything. Our goal is usually to help a community either get a little bit hands-off in the engagement or see a way to do it better, right? So if you guys as a planning board love to talk to your community, you love to have those open forums, you love to have those kind of events, we'll help you dial that up to be the most exciting and engaging thing it can be. And if you have a topic, on the other hand, that's maybe a little bit hairier in town, and it's a little tough for the planning board to be talking about it, we can come in and be a bit of a neutral facilitator who doesn't have the same skin in the game as a local neighbor and try and sort of help play through sort of a challenging thing too. So sometimes it can be on the positive side, 99% of it, and sometimes it's trying to work through a challenge, but we're ready to be part of those teams either way. And then, like I said, this last piece for technical assistance is really the rubber hitting the road, right? It's how do we get this stuff done? How do we put our engagement to use? How do we find the goals and visions we set in our plans coming to fruition? And For us, we try and be sort of a backstop and help with that technical assistance. So like Michelle said in the beginning, if you pick up the phone and call us about anything, we are there to help connect you to somebody we might know who is an expert or provide you some expertise we have in-house. We do a lot of grant writing and administration. We do some project development and coaching. So when you have an idea, but you really aren't sure how to move it forward yet, we can work on that sort of thing. We have an incredibly talented GIS staffer at the council who's great at putting a lot of information onto a map, so it makes a lot of sense to people and you can physically see where things are getting built or not and what's going on in certain sort of topics you're watching, be them floods, water, environmental, animal movement, building permits, whatever it is, right? She's great at mapping that kind of data and telling those stories. And sort of kind of anything. Right. The last piece is we do something called shared planner services, which is sometimes you get a tricky application in front of a town and it can be challenging, or sometimes you have a lot of applications and just the burden of running the agendas and getting all of the staff notes can be a challenge. Sometimes we'll come in and work as a shared planner across towns when there's a need for it. So we're kind of always open to seeing technical assistance be aimed at what you guys need and we can either provide or connect you with. So that is a little bit about us and what we do. It's not just me and Michelle who do it. We are a staff of, and I was just kind of counting this out, about 7 planners and support staff who we can put to good use across the communities. Some of us have some particular focus areas and things we're really good at, and some of us are really good generalists. So how does what we do tie into what you guys do? And where do we sort of show up to help? So kind of part 2 here is around master plans, but let me pause here and sort of say, do you guys have questions for me now that I might have talked over just because of the Zoom?
I have one. How are you funded?
Okay, so we are funded through a handful of things. We're funded partly by membership dues through the community. We are funded mostly through grants that come through the state and federal government. And then we're funded sort of in a share for local contract work. So for example, if we're just redoing a master plan in a town, like right now we're working with the town of Dalton to redo their master plan. That's just a contract we do between Dalton and us. So it's a mix of things. The majority of our funding is federal grant funding that we bring in through economic development, transportation, and recently a lot more through housing. Any other questions?
When you have these conversations, like if you're sitting in on a meeting where there's people are discussing, let's say housing or something like that, how many of you show up for that and how many of it is local people that are on the board?
Oh, so
I'm-
usually,
I'm a little skeptical. I've been to those kind of.
sure, I think I missed the last half of your question, but what I'd say is when we come to do that, what it tends to be is for us, if it's support we're providing to the town, it'd be basically me at one of your meetings. So either a planning board meeting or a select board meeting, or one of my colleagues. If
Okay.
you ask us to come in and have a outreach conversation in town, not with you all, and bring the results back to you, that would be more like a couple of us and a handful of townspeople, and then we'd bring that information to you. But part of me feels like I hear where you're heading, which is that I think a lot of times our housing conversations in particular end up with a lot of sort of middlemen who get involved in the conversation and a few less of the doers in the room. We tend to be sort of a supporter. So we end up usually being in the room when asked to be by you guys to help you work something through.
I have, another one is one that's government funded. And excuse me for saying this, but I have a concern that everything is so political right now that it makes me very nervous. We have a school board that I feel is very political. And if they don't want, you don't get to speak. So that's probably my concern, but, and if you're helping out with, writing these things, is it already done so that it's on a legal basis, so that it's, you know, if it were challenged, it would be okay, or do we still need an attorney for that?
Yeah, so I guess I'll say a couple pieces honestly to it, to the political piece. I agree with you. I think our world has gotten very political, and that makes it very hard sometimes to work in government in a more neutral way. As a planning commission, that is a requirement of ours, and something we believe in through and through, is that we will always be the neutral party there to make voices heard and figure out where the majority of folks want to go.
Yeah.
I think that practice you're saying of limiting
Yeah.
comment.
I just get a
Limiting-
little nervous.
Yeah, and you know what, limiting comment is a really tricky thing to do because of that, right? Like you're saying, it doesn't always feel like that at all the meetings. Sometimes we'll come in and honestly help with the procedures to make sure that tries to stay neutral and to be a little bit of a policer of things like protocol, right? Of who gets to speak and for how long and how
I've been to meetings where you
How
had to
even
write the
handed on the
question on a
endless
piece
thing,
of paper
because
first.
it is
And then
hard.
they choose which ones they want to have. So.
Yeah, you know what, and that's a piece.
many meetings.
Yeah, you know what, and I think that is really the point of honestly why it's really important to have good people behind the scenes helping out, is to make sure that something doesn't end up in that kind of a way, right? Because
Yeah.
it absolutely can happen. Yeah, so maybe I'll leave that one there unless I'm forgetting part of your question.
No, that's my big concerns when we bring somebody in that doesn't live in the town.
Yeah, I understand that. And I'll say, oh, you know what, I remember your second part, which is about the legal. So when it comes to things like writing an ordinance, right, a decision you're gonna have to stand behind.
Yeah.
So I've been a municipal planning director where those are hot and controversial and often end up in court. So I know the importance of them being written soundly and being something you can back up. So when it is clear to us, and it is as simple as a planner recommending it, it'll be that simple. And when it needs a lawyer behind it, we will always make sure that there is a legal review of something before we put it in front of you. Whether we figure out that you guys do that through your town solicitor or we do it separately, but I completely agree, you need to have confidence in things that you hang your hat on.
Okay. Is Lincoln part of this?
Yep, Lincoln is.
Okay.
All
If we're
right.
ever in the same district, would that ever change? I mean, like some of the voting this year was crazy. Lincoln
Right.
on that side of the mountain, and we're on this side of the mountain. And I think the division is wrong. But
North Country Council has historically forever, I think you represent from about Ashland or Plymouth North, all the way north to Canada and
okay,
the Vermont, the whole northern part. There's 9 of them,
Vermont.
but
Okay.
everything between Maine and Vermont, and from about Ashland, Plymouth North is the North Country.
Yep, I couldn't have described it better than that.
okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna jump into master planning, and if I talk over questions, it's really because of Zoom, so we'll make space at the end. Because I'm a sucker for format, like I said, I had this one look similar, but the bubbles are a little different. So when it comes to master plans, I'm gonna hit on what the purpose of them is, what and who to usually include in a master plan. And then this third piece, which to me is kind of the core of it, implementation and connection to regulations. So I'm going to go quickly over the purpose piece, right? A master plan is, in its quickest piece, it is a plan that is supposed to direct the future guidance of how a community will develop. What goals does the community see for itself in the next 10, 20 years, and how do you see yourselves reaching them? sometimes it's sort of used to answer this question of where and when to rebuild a town. It's kind of a funny idea, but a lot of times the master plan will think about this idea of, change is kind of a constant in our world, but sometimes change can come quickly, through sometimes catastrophic things, right? But if change comes quickly, sometimes the master plan is how you use things to frame what's important to you to build back. In its heart, it sets a vision, right? It sets a vision for a place, and a vision is always a lofty goal, right? It's always an aspiration, and it's usually something that in a plan, you try and set a vision and then think about all of the different ways you need to behave to get there, right? What does it take to reach that vision in your town? And as a community changes, and all communities do over time, as you age, grow more affluent, less affluent, have more development, less development. It changes over time all the time. And so really the purpose of a master plan is to think about what all those changing things are doing all the time, and how can you guide them as best you can towards what you think the community wants to see across the board. And so that question of what the community wants to see across the board brings me into the second column of what and who to include. To really understand what a community wants, you have to include a lot of people. You have to include a lot of people for exactly those set of questions that we asked before about how do you make sure it doesn't become politicized, and how does a master plan become sort of a unifying piece in your town and not a divider in your town? And they can be both depending on how they come together. So in my mind, the heart of that is on who you involve in the process, including involving as many people as you disagree with as humanly possible, so that you can really see when all the pieces and different voices come together, what does that really shake out like across all of Woodstock, right? What do people want in the whole? Where do they agree? So that you know where you can step forward together, and where is there disagreement in the community about what's right. In it, you're going to always want to put some goals in there, right? Of things that are basically tangible ways to reach that vision, right? What are those goals to get there? What are the steps? And then it's going to have policies and actions too, which go a little closer into how do you make that goal come true, right? What specific steps are you going to take, and how are you going to handle things you're not quite sure about? As far as detail goes, the level of detail can depend a lot. All master plans have to have a vision, and they have to have a section that talks about land use, because when push comes to shove, there's a lot of different stuff your master plan can do. But what it will always do is it's always going to look at that piece of what gets built where, and how are people using the land that makes up a community today. So you're always going to need to sort of have a vision, and you're always going to sort of need to assess who's living in the community, where they're living in the community, how people are using the land. The last piece I'm going to talk about is, so once you set that, right, you've engaged as many people as possible, you've sorted through all the disagreement, and you've shaken it all around until it sort of lands somewhere where you say, okay, we feel like we have a good vision, we have some good goals. How are we going to sort of chart the path towards that, right? How are we going to implement those goals? And so what you want to do, in my opinion, in a master plan is you really want to sort of dig into that implementing. Who is in the community to help do things? What do you have to put to use? What don't you use in the community? And how are you going to take the sum of what you have to sort of reach where you think you want to go? And then where are you going to find the gaps, right? Because maybe they're just gaps where there's something you want, but you don't really have the capacity to do right now. You're going to look at things you can do yourself. You're going to look at things that you might be able to do on the outside, right? You'll look at things like, can you be adjusting something at the planning board level in your subdivision regulations that can help you reach a goal you guys have set for something? And on the other side of things, can you reach out to people like us or people we can connect you to around grant money to help you guys get something done, right? That'd be an external thing you're trying to do versus adjusting your rules, which is kind of more internal. Master plan can have both in there. At its core, when it comes to relationship to regulations, the master plan is the basically kind of like the canvas that you then paint all of your land use regulations on in a community. The master plan has to back up anything you put in place. Things like site plan regulations, zoning ordinances in town, historic district guidelines, subdivision regulations even too, all are supported by the goals and the vision you set forward in your master plan. So there's a lot of different pieces you can hit on in a master plan and a lot of different topics. Like I said before, every time you always have to have a vision and you always have to talk about land use, because at the heart of it, that's what your master plan looks at. You can also then sort of break things up and look at it by topic, which is something most master plans do. And I think actually something the Woodstock master plan does too, right? Is you look through these different set of topics and sort of everything you guys see on the screen here is actually set forward in state statute. So it's in every state across the country. What happens is state statute will enable, it gives permission to the community, to the municipalities, and some states do it differently, but in New Hampshire, we're just going to stick to the way New Hampshire does it, that the state gives the communities the right to regulate land and be sort of the end all and be all decision maker on how sort of local decisions get made on the land in a community, what gets built where, how it's used, how it sort of all comes together. And these other topics you see underneath are all the sort of specialty topics you can look at to really dig into what's going on in your community. These things sort of have different importance in different towns, right? Some communities are really, really very concerned about their transportation systems because it feels overrun or because they have a lot of new goals for, you know, basically bike lanes, or they look at these sort of better senior transit going on for people who get to medical appointments. And in those towns, they want to sort of really sort of focus on that transportation element. Economic development too, if you're really looking at how businesses and wages can get improved in your town. You can sort of pick and choose, like it's a menu a bit, and the community itself, the planning board specifically, is the chooser in a town who gets to decide what of these topics are most meaningful and need to be really explored in your master plan. You're going to do that by coming up with a bunch of statements and principles and data and stories and maps and basically every possible way you can look at any of these topics in your community. You're going to look at usually empirical data, like big time data, right? Census data that's collected at the federal level, things that are sort of community wide. And then you're going to look at little things like focus groups with, say, a particular group of your community who you're concerned about, say, aging seniors or parents of young children. And you're going to sort of try and take all those little pieces together and knit together a real vision and set of goals on what the community sort of cares about in each of these areas and how you could sort of step forward together in the places where there is a shared vision. There's a lot of benefits to a master plan. Not the least of which is honestly just working through it as a planning board. One thing I want to say is, having done this in a handful of towns, one of the most interesting things is really to just sort of hold up that mirror to yourself as a town and spend a couple of hours every month talking about what is really going on in the community and who lives in the community and where do sort of individual goals and community-wide goals come together and come apart, right? What do people want to see one by one, and what do they want to see sort of across the whole when you're doing survey work and stuff? You can then use that information to guide and help your local officials to use it themselves when they're making decisions, right? That vision and those goals you set in your master plan, it's not just in regulations that you can use those, right? If you say that Woodstock is a community that really, really values conservation and eclectic small businesses that are sort of a heart of a community, there's a lot of different ways you might encourage your local officials to do different things to help with that. Budgeting decisions, different decisions. So like I said, it can help guide budget and capital improvement plans. It sets that stage, like I said, for any land use ordinances you come, they sort of all need to line up with that master plan vision you have. It can help straight up access like better grant funds. A lot of times I'm not sure if anybody in the room has written grant applications, but if they relate to a community related topic, many times you get asked if that is reflected in your master plan. And so taking time to really figure out where your goals are and how you move them forward can actually help you largely score better in grant applications and bring funds into the town that are outside to sort of help get things done in your community. Probably the last piece, and one that I think we sort of glaze over sometimes, is that it really jumpstarts a community engagement process and a conversation about what it is to be a resident of Woodstock. And sometimes it just really helps build social capital in that way. When you're developing a master plan, the question on who to include, I think I said an off the cuff comment before, was basically everybody. And pretty much if you can disagree with people, you need them all in the room at a different moment. There's two pieces to this, right? So I want to talk about what the planning board and residents do, and then sort of how to dig into experts. So you all as a planning board have the sort of tallest order on your plate. You guys are responsible for the preparation of the master plan. It is not a document that goes to the voters for approval. It is something you all are tasked with developing and you all choose to adopt. When you're doing your sort of master plan development process, you want to think about who makes up the community today and whose voices matter. So your residents are really important, but residents can actually be a tricky question. Is it property owners? Is it renters? Is it people who live in the community or people who own second homes? And how do you sort of want to weight different voices? Or do you want to hear from everyone, or do you want to hear from specific people about specific things? The question really, I think, to do is to think about trying to make sure you can hear from as many different groups of people as possible in a way that is still not too unruly for you, right? It's good to always come up with a good structure, but the goal is to not just hear from sort of one set of people, but to hear from your residents any way you can slice that pie. You want to talk to your businesses in town. You want to talk to property owners. Sometimes recently, actually, and this is kind of interesting to me, I've heard some people who are actually in towns talking to people who want to live in a town but can't, would-be residents, to sort of, when they were having a particular challenge around getting like a young adult workforce to come into town. They wanted to go to surrounding towns and say, how come you don't live in Durham more, right? So sometimes you can even try and hear from a specific voice when you know it is not sort of there on its own. And so you can reach outside the community in that way, which is a little bit different than what I usually see. When it comes to reaching outside of the community, there's two places to go. Town officials, right? Town officials would be elected ones. They are members of your community. They know a lot, but your town staff too, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Residents of Woodstock can be either way, but they tend to know a lot. Your assessors, anybody who works on your grand list, your select board members, they know a lot about how the town operates. Your public works and public services crew, they know more than pretty much anybody about how the town really operates and gets things done when it comes to roads and your systems. You want to sort of hear from all those voices about what keeps them up at night, what's going on, what do they need? Because at the end of the day, the planning board develops it, but there are a lot of people who can see their interests reflected in the master plan in a way that's helpful if you engage with them. When you go outside, you can also sort of do this piece and hear from advocacy and interest groups who might have a particular interest in your town. As we talked about before, when you do that, it's important to try and stay even-handed and make sure that any advocacy or interest group can have the ability to bend your ear on the topic, not just sort of specifically selected ones. And the last piece is you can always reach out and sort of throw up a flag for help. There are planning consultants across the state who do it. NCC, we do it in our contract work with towns. We can help, even just help you try and sort of figure out how to approach something without doing the plan itself. So there's sort of a lot of people to include in different ways. Some of them are resources, some of them are topic experts, and then really anybody who has a cross section with deciding what gets passed, what gets built, what gets done in Woodstock. Now, the next piece is how much to include, and which, if you're sort of timing me on this presentation, you'll know I probably go over. But you want to have enough statements, principles, and data, right? Information to back up any goals you put forward. So if you had a goal, say, about improving pedestrian mobility around where your businesses are and trying to make sure that there was adequate parking, but that it was tucked away and not taking up sort of prime commercial space. Kind of a big goal, but say that was sort of your goal. You'd want to make sure that you have data in that plan that looks at the number of parking spaces you need, the number of commercial businesses you have, how many seats they have, where you could put a sidewalk now, where you couldn't, how wide is the right of way on the road, how many people walk between what, right? So you want to make sure that whatever goals you have enough data and you have enough sort of statements around it to really back up what you're going to do. The most important thing I want to say about data, though, is data for data's sake is sort of just flat, right? A fact can be cherry picked and anyone can say almost anything. But what I think the most important thing to do as a community is to try and stitch together some of your data and think about what it really kind of means, right? What does the way people access cars and their incomes versus their disability status and age, what does all of that mean together for people meeting their basic needs as they get older in the community, right? Any one of those facts could say something on its own, but all stitched together, you can sort of get a better understanding and a little bit more meaning behind it. So because of that, you want to sort of look for summary trends, right? Things that are happening over time or changing over time. And really, you always want to try and ground anything you have in public engagement. So if you're thinking about a new goal or something's coming up, you want to talk to the community about it and really sort of try and ground anything you do in what you know they are either interested in or willing to learn about. When it comes to sort of the goals, policies, and action items, these are the doers of your plan. These are the things you're going to try and do and how you'll try and do them. You want your goals to be wide reaching, right? And future looking. You want them to be benchmarks to help you kind of reach this vision. You also want to have policies in there, right? So a good plan sets a goal. And then in my mind, it does two things. It tells you the steps you're going to take to get there. So those are the action items, like what do we need to do? Step A, step B, step C to get to our goal here. The other thing it's going to have or should have are policies. And policies they're a little bit softer, I'd say, but the idea behind a policy is sometimes you don't know the next step coming your way, right? Sometimes, I'm sure as a planning board, you feel like this, you don't get to pick the applications in front of you, right? You respond to things as they come your way. And policies are those things that set forward how you will approach a question when you don't know, right? When it's not a specific action in front of you, but something might come your way. What is the policy you guys are going to generally employ there to help sort of keep shifting where you're headed towards that goal you've got? Really important. I tend to put an important thing at the very bottom of a slide, I realize. Goals are really only best when you ground them to what is capable in the like what the town is capable of and what the town has the capacity to do. There are an unbelievable set of goals communities can have, from very light and very small to very, very robust big programs. And it's important to sort of look at what the community does today, what they have an interest for doing in the future, and make sure that your goals are things you can reach with what you have sort of in hand today or what you think you're going to be able to have in the future, right? It's important that they're grounded because goals are things that you should really be able to reach. So now I'm going to sort of step to this piece on implementation, because that idea of goals should be something you can reach is the heart of implementation. Implementation is just a way too long word we use so much in planning to say, how are you going to do it, right? And there's a lot of ways that you can do what's in your master plan. And regulations are kind of one piece of them. they're the one people think of most often, but they're actually kind of only one way to use a master plan. Like I've kind of been saying along the way, you can use the vision of the master plan, the goals, the specific actions and policies in it to try and make decisions around budgets, capital improvement decisions, growth management decisions of the town, where to sort of put interest in boards and committee projects. There's a lot you can do sort of differently beyond that when you think about the master plan as a place you just set a shared vision together, right? Every time I'll say implementation is the heart of the plan because it's how you'll do it, but that it has to be rooted in the values that are local, right? It's got to be rooted in your community, and local means a lot of different things, right? A lot of times, I'm not a local to you guys, but to people down in Concord, they think I am, right? So it's for you guys to define what's local, but things should be rooted in what's the local values. And they need to be sort of aimed at what the local needs and opportunities are. And then they have to be sort of ground truth to what you think you can do, right? A big goal that's too aspirational is not a better goal than a small one you can reach, in my mind. And so really the master plan is kind of where you set that vision, and then your implementation is how you say, through across everything the town does, how could we play forward that vision? How could we try and step that forward in different ways? When it comes to the regulation piece, there's times that it's required, and there are times that a master plan is just good practice, right? So communities are not required to develop a master plan. No one can develop one for you. As the planning board, you have to do it for yourself if you're going to, but you're not required to develop a master plan. If you want to do certain land use regulations, you are required to do it as like a first step or like a prerequisite to those ordinances. But that's really because the goal is that the ordinances need to be rooted in a community vision. So it's important to kind of separate sometimes the master plan from the ordinances, because a lot of times we marry them together, but the master plan is so much bigger and wider, and ordinances are really one piece of how you do it. So in the state of New Hampshire, you must have a master plan if you're going to have a zoning ordinance, historic district ordinances, growth management ordinances, and those are ordinances that like restrict the number of permits that can be doled out in a year if sort of growth is a concern. And so there's different pieces that they have to be in place for, and then there are some that you don't need them for, right? Your master plan can be used for a million different things: grant funding, budget decisions, just how to advocate for sort of a new project coming into town that you think could bring something good and what you want to advocate for, right? It can come out of your master plan. And so there's a handful of different ways to do it. It's important to sort of know that your master plan is never itself like a regulation, but that because it's the backstop or the reasoning behind a regulation, they often kind of get married together in towns. And I think one of the most important things a town can do is look at sort of all the different ways you can implement your master plan instead of just getting bogged down in the one we see most, which is rules. This is something I stole straight out of OSI, actually, who was the Office of Strategic Initiatives, but it's been retitled at the state a couple of years ago to the Office of Planning and Development. So that was my mistake in this. But this comes off of their old website, actually. And these are just the steps to master planning. So you guys have this. I'm not going to talk this through. But it's a nice one because it gets to this piece of the plan isn't done once, right? The idea of a plan is you'll keep revisiting it. And every 10 years, it should be redone. It should always look out in the future and kind of keep always revisiting it to keep it sort of a working document. It's a lot of information. I know you guys are a planning board, so this is not entirely all new to you, but there's a lot to it. And so I wanted to sort of just throw up here a couple of different places you can go for resources. The links in here would work. You guys have a PDF of this, so you feel free to sort of click on anything in here, visit our website, or as Michelle said, pick up the phone and give us a call. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and stop chatting at you.
Thank you very much. Do any of you have any questions or?
Can we get a copy of this presentation?
Yes, you can. Yeah. Absolutely.
They'll
great.
send it to me and I can forward it on to the board.
Email would be great.
Yeah, I got a copy. I pushed the button and made myself a copy when she originally sent it. But yes, we can get a copy of it. And it's just something to think about. We have a master plan. We have always had a master plan. For 40 years we had one. And our master plan has always been very broad, motherhood and apple pie type, quality of life and good environment and good place to live and you know, good place to work and so forth, and protect the environment. We have a very broad, not specific goals in it. Just, you know, what,
Can we get copies of it?
yes, in fact, I got one here. I didn't make copies because we have a lot going on tonight, but yeah, we'll get you all a copy of it. And it's, you know, it's a good time. There's so many new members to even think about it. The last one was adopted April 12th, 2021. And it's, so we just reworked. The one we had before that was 2014. And like I said, it's very basic. We did not include, you have to have the land use part, and you have to have your goals and your vision and objectives and all those kinds of things. But the last one we did, we deleted all the birds and the reptiles and the bees and the trees and the list all our lakes and all the inventory. We deleted all that stuff and just had it be a few basic goals. But there's a lot going on right now. We're at a crossroad where it probably makes sense for us to think about.
How does this interact with the select board?
It's our, we are the planners for the town of Woodstock.
So there are advocates, so to speak.
We are an elected board, we're an independent board, we're the planners, just like the selectmen are the administrators. The Conservation Commission worries about the conservation, and the Budget Committee worries about the budget. We are the planners. So it's our responsibility and duty to decide how much we should plan. And remember when we had that meeting, that little informational meeting, there were some people in the room that thought that there's so much going on, we should have some goals and some visions, and some plans. That maybe we should be more specific, because there's a lot going on right now. An awful lot going on right now.
And things change really quickly, so.
We're in a world right now of quick change. It's just like back when condominiums came along. That was a time in our history that was an awful lot going on, an awful lot of change. We're right there again. We're right there again with, we just have to look to our neighbors to see all the, and probably it behooves us to somehow find out what folks want. Do they want to continue to be a small village, a small town? A lot of it, you know, change is inevitable. It's going to happen. Obviously, you can't stop it if it meets all the regulations in town. You can't. You don't want to, and you can't. It's not fair to intrude upon people's rights to
We don't have to turn into a plastic
to
cookie
use
cutter community.
their property the way that they wish and so forth. So we need to think about it. Do we want to send out any messages as to what the majority of our residents here in Woodstock want for their town and their place to live and their place to work? It's us that would mull it over with the input of as many people as we can to try to put down on paper some kind of a vision, a goal for our future and a plan, and without a plan, you don't have a roadmap to try to get there at least. So it's just important timing, and it behooves us, and when we had that meeting, some people wanted more detail in our master plan. So everybody read it. The only thing we can do is everybody read it. We have one. By law, we have one. You don't have to have one certain kind of a master plan. You can have one like ours that is just general, broad motherhood and apple pie. Or you can have one with more detail and direction to it. So I think all of us should read it, see what we think, and come to a conclusion, and find a way to ask the public, well, what do you want? You know, what do you want us to do? Because we have a board that's supposed to figure that out somehow with input. So thank you for coming. Are they gone?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for,
Okay.
no, we're still here. Thank you for
Yeah.
having us.
Did my
Yeah.
words kind of sum up, one of our jobs that we should out?
Absolutely. And I think what I would say is, don't shy away from, the engagement pieces they're hard to figure out what you want to do at the start, and they can seem a little bit like they're a big group hug you're trying to give on a lot of people, and a community is a whole lot of people who disagree on things usually, right? So that outreach and piece is so important to do, and it can seem hard, but I'd say you guys are going to be great at it, and it's just leaning in and sort of asking the question. You find people are willing to tell you what they think when you ask, and so I think you summed it up very, very well. Definitely look at your master plan. Know that there's sometimes people change them whole hog, right, and do a complete redo on them. And sometimes you just go in and tweak one section where you say, you know what, there's something happening different in our community around this. So maybe most of the master plan is fine, but you want to look at a little piece of it closer. But I think Bonnie's absolutely right. Get to know it, because it is your document. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Please.
Have a good
is
night.
Mr. Plan online.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Anybody can read it online, read it. And you guys in the audience, read it. Because we need some kind of guidance here. It's our tool, it's the planning board's tool, but it's not our tool. It's something we put together that folks want. And it becomes a roadmap and a little bit of guidance to everybody that's part of Woodstock. All right, thank you. Do we want to do we want to save the budget for last? Because I think the people here are probably interested in things, they're more interested in other things on this piece of paper than the budget. So let's get back to the budget at the end and talk about the review of the subdivision regulations. Laura has gone through our regulations with one thing in mind, and that is to make sure that they meet current law. That she hasn't changed our attitude or our direction or anything, none of that kind of language in there as yet, but she has a rough draft, very rough, and I got a copy of the very rough one. You can hardly read it. But I'm thinking, and it's her working draft document. It's got a lot of spell check and other stuff she's got to do, but about 35 pages long. And it's just a rough draft to start with. So it's not ready for prime time, but maybe if we get a copy of this rough draft to everybody, they can look at it between now and the December meeting and see what you see. See what she's done so far. She's willing to come meet with us. She's willing to answer on any of our questions. But our subdivision regulation is pretty old. And it's time to update it again. And the two you heard North Country Council say they kind of go hand in hand. subdivision regulation should reflect the goals of the master plan. The last ordinance was adopted in July 11th, 2011. It's 11 years old. And we're gonna be growing. So it's very timely. And it's our document. It's adopted by us. It's not a town meeting thing. It's something we work on. It's got to be legal under the law of New Hampshire, but it also can reflect our views on things also, just like the master plan can reflect our views. So that's another important document we gotta work on over the next few months. So let's make sure everybody gets a copy of the draft we just got from the attorney, which is, here's how good you can read it. Oh my gracious, it's very small print and it's very faint in light blue, because it's probably in one of those tools that you edit with, but she promised that we have something, so this is the something. Here's how faint it is, very hard to read.
It might be easier on the computer.
So, but it might be easier reading it on the computer, because I can't even read that over there. I printed it off, it's about 35 pages. So if everybody can read through this and see what you think of it, we're gonna, and that brings me to the thought is, are you guys interested in having some subcommittees?
You
Have
have
a
a,
link so we know how to do it.
Yeah. You'll get that,
Email
you'll
it
get the
to me.
master plan, you'll get, all these other things we'll make sure you get, and, are we interested in breaking up into little subcommittees to work on some of this stuff? Or not? We'll never get done if we just have one meeting a month and all the other business we have on our meeting, we'll never get anywhere. So I didn't know if you guys, were interested in working in little subgroups on some of this stuff.
what type of subgroups are you talking about?
Well, if we're all interested in master plan, subdivision regulations. Floodplain, we got a big project we're gonna do for that, so folks can continue their flood insurance program qualification.
That was one of the things that I heard, North Country Council said that they do provide support with reviewing floodplain ordinance, and we might ask for their help with
They
that.
might, although, I have, and I'll send it all to all of you. I printed off the stuff. And we're further along ahead on that than we think, because, in February, they had the meetings, and some maps and some stuff done, some strategic planning done and everything else. And there's been some communications with, between FEMA and the selectmen. There's a bunch done. And remember Scott was working on it.
That's right, I think he got something from OPD as well.
Scott, I copied it off. We got a whole bunch, got another whole stack of papers from FEMA. And this does take town meeting vote. And they've already come to the conclusion that we may need a sample warrant article. Are you in favor of adopting of the amendment of blah, 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 proposed by the planning board? And it's us that propose it, not the selectmen. It's our job. For the town floodplain ordinance, it modifies our floodplain ordinance, and it also enables folks to get the insurance. Amend and you assert what you want to amend, necessary to comply with the requirements of the flood insurance program. So there's a whole stack of communications that have gone to the selectmen. There's even a draft to the floodplain management ordinance. So there's two things going on here, adopting the maps and adjusting our ordinance. And this was sent out by FEMA. So there's this whole stack of papers. I just copied it off today. It's a whole stack of papers to look at and figure out how we're gonna get it done. And Judy, I talked to Judy today. She's willing to help, Judy Welch. So I think it's got to be a coordinated effort between the selectmen and us as planning board members. And Judy suggested that, the town needs to be clear who's taking the lead on it or who's working on it. Is the planning board gonna take a leadership role in it to make sure that all this work gets done by town meeting? Or are we gonna say, nope, we're not going? And so then the selectmen have to figure out how to deal with it. But personally, I think it's a planning issue.
I think it's part of
It's a part
town planning, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
part of planning. So, Judy has said she'll help us in this outfit, which is FEMA. And there's a contact lady's name in among all these papers. That is a contact. And what's her name here? It's.
So far, that's two subcommittees that you're looking at.
At least. Katie Nelson from the State Floodplain Management Program Coordinator is willing to help. And so isn't this, yeah, it's Katie. And as well as Northern Council can help us, but we somehow gotta get through that. And, there is, a slight amendment, that is suggested by the town attorney to the flood, earth excavation ordinance. It doesn't change things dramatically, but there are a couple of, there's a little bit of wording. I've got it, let me see, where is that one? There's a little bit of wording suggested by the attorney to clarify a few things in the, floodplain ordinance. Earth excavation ordinance. Yeah, excuse me, earth excavation ordinance. And I've got that, here it is right here. I can kind of read what the attorney is suggesting. It's not a major shift in anything, but, under section 5, it's not, we do not require state permits to be submitted as part of the application. That's, we don't do that. And in the submission, where it refers to related permit approvals or other documents pertinent to the excavation proposal, it's not, that is not referring to the state permits. That's referring probably to driveway permits or other stuff that you need. And this, and same under, the alteration of terrain permit is not required to be in the application. And it was suggested we change one word from should to shall. The following site development standards shall be incorporated into the site excavation plan conditions for permit approval. She went through, the town attorney went through, and there's a few, and that work can proceed on portions on the site that do not require state permits. So that, this needs to be considered. And we don't have to send a plan to the Registry of Deeds or the Office of Energy and Planning. So those kinds of changes. So somebody, we have to look at that and decide and vote whether we agree with the changes or one of the changes.
Let me have that.
So that's another. You want to work on that one? All right. I don't know if I've marked up another one, but so who wants to work on the earth excavation suggested changes?
You live
Jerry,
Willie's house, right? No, up on
Yeah,
Paradise.
the old
Yes,
Willie's house,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we're
So
neighbors, so
two
we
of
can.
you, the
two-
two of you wanna work on, or look at this and work on that one?
Where
I'm
you
right
live?
down the street too.
Young
Okay,
Street, right at the very end.
we'll have those two work
Juliet
on that.
Malini's house.
Oh, Mrs.
I'm the
Levy,
daughter. Oh.
I met you down at the Legion. What you're doing, you trying to get my wife to play pinochle with it.
Who wants to raise their hand and see what they, work on the subdivision regulation changes?
I'm gonna raise my hand to work with Scott and Judy on that, floodplain stuff.
Oh, good. So Scott, Judy, and Margaret will be the, floodplain stuff and the FEMA insurance stuff, right? So we got that one covered. And we got the earth excavation. Who's gonna work on subdivision regulations?
I will.
You and I, so
Sure.
work on that.
Sounds great.
All right. Is there anything else we got? I think that's the basics, but it's a lot of work and we had about 3 meetings with no quorum. So it piled up, it's piled up and the only one, this is the good news. The only one that has the town meeting, the March deadline and get a warrant article ready is the floodplain stuff.
Yeah.
The others are our documents and our worries, the earth excavation and the subdivision and the master plan, if we're gonna, consider any changes on that. Those have a public hearing and the planning board adopts them. So we're not under the fire to get them ready, warrant article ready or something in January. We got a little more time on those. So think about the master plan for now, read it.
Yeah.
And think about whether we want more detail in it. To guide our future, or do we like our, real vanilla one that we have that is general stuff. All right, we did the earth excavation pit visits. We did 2 of them. We did the one and the Donahue one on a prior evening. What date was that? Remember? October 17.
17.
October 17, we did those 2. And
During
then
the daylight too.
during the daylight savings time. We did those 2. And we didn't note anything extraordinary or unusual to report. We took the pictures. As part of our annual requirement, but we didn't see anything there, either site to do or to worry about. We did the 2 east side, west side of the road Calder pits tonight. It started at 4:30. We got through the first one in perfect daylight. The second one was kicked. I brought my flashlight and we, we did a basic walk around and so forth.
And drive through.
And drive through. And so we might want to go back with better, earlier and better daylight. For those 2 sites. Is it okay if we come back, schedule a review an earlier time with more light? Okay. All right. And we saw a lot of piles of material. We didn't, I'm not saying we.
Is it
started-
possible to have a drone and just film it too? I mean.
Yeah, do whatever you want, Donna.
Just,
I don't know.
I was having a
if
hard
it's
time
wrong.
getting out of work all this.
Yeah, I know.
I think the only question we really had on Calder's was the
On the west side.
wetlands. On the
Yeah,
west side, the
we-
wetlands.
Yeah.
Where the wetlands intersect or come into play, or do they border?
The only thing, and I said to
land or
you,
not?
I said to your son, the only thing, and we didn't bring plans with us, because we wouldn't have been able to read them in the pitch dark anyway. So, but that's something that maybe we can get with you and meet with you. And that's the only thing, obviously, that's the big thing that, and I said to your son that certainly we would want to know where the wetland delineation on the map is and make sure you're not in it with your work you're doing. And the other thing is the notification to the folks, when you do any blasting. Those are the only two topics that we want to be sure of. Those are the main two topics we want to be sure of. And I'm not saying we saw anything that thought otherwise, but it would be helpful if maybe you went with us and we took the map and you went with us and explain to us where those wetland delineations are.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so we will plan a time to do that one. Do you want to do it? Oh gosh, it'll be December. Do we want to? What's
I
everybody?
got no wetlands
What-
in December.
What's everybody's brothers about returning to verify the wetland delineation
I'll be doing the December meeting.
and, okay,
So
you're
we
gonna
can
be by
do-
Zoom.
GP, you can, on a map,
It's all.
topographical map.
It's all mapped out for you. You get to-
I know, that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
we got it back
You got
up.
it on Horizon, not outside of it.
Yeah, we, in fact, when we got back here, we put the maps out. And then we looked at them.
Big
Yeah,
deal.
here they are.
Have them mapped, so you better have enough copies.
So we've got the maps, and so, perhaps you can show us, it looked, to me, it looked like it's the whole ledgy part to the left and around back.
Is
Is
the
where,
wetland,
what's that?
is the wetland?
Yes,
No. So
No.
you're looking at it wrong.
I had the map going the wrong direction.
Yeah, all the
Okay.
ledgy part is not the wetlands at all.
All the more reason, well, I wondered how the ledge could be wetlands, because unless it was little streams coming down to there, but all the more reason. If you can go with us out there and show us,
Yep,
we may have had the map going in the wrong direction. Could be. So we can decide, when can we go? I think we should go. Well, it's too cold and darker. As far as I'm concerned, it needs to be before November 27th.
It gives us about a week and a half.
Yeah. Does anybody, when can you guys go back out?
I think on Thursday.
This Thursday? Okay,
Thursday in the morning.
No, in the afternoon, but
See,
I can't do it this week.
can't do it this week, no, we
We're
can't
short staffed.
do it, so, you wanna go back out the Wednesday?
This Wednesday?
We'd have to notice it, we'd have to put the notice up.
I'm free the whole day Wednesday.
Can you do Wednesday? And like, even if it's 3 o'clock or something, not.
I can do Wednesday.
Let's do it, because obviously we did.
Wednesday I
We
go
weren't
in.
oriented, right?
I think I go in at 1 on Wednesday. And Thursday I go in at 1.
On this one map, it shows
No, I go in at 10.
wetland violation. Am I reading that right?
Yeah.
And this is on the west side of Route 3, right?
yes.
Yes, yep. All right, I can do anything on Wednesday, I can do Thursday, I can do anything on Thursday. Not tomorrow. The following week, Monday,
Got Thanksgiving on that Thursday.
Monday or Tuesday.
I have to be in Vermont on that weekend.
So Margaret's out. I'm in, you could do before Thursday.
Wednesdays, but really.
Okay.
Tuesday and Wednesday, I mean, I've gotta be at Derby Line on tomorrow.
All right,
I've got, my kids have doctor's appointments on Wednesday. Thursday, I gotta pack and get out of here.
let's
By
see
the time to
what
mess.
about the rest of the members. Their availability is.
On Thursday, I've got, went with the doctor on my knees. But that's in the morning. So I can do Thursday afternoon.
Okay, can you do Thursday afternoon?
I get out at 4 on Thursday.
Or, yeah, it's too dark.
And like I said, I know. And it's stocking day, so.
All right, Who can go on
Well,
Wednesday?
just beyond the.
I
beyond
don't
what we
work
could see.
Friday.
You could call me on Wednesday or review it.
I could go, I could do
Be
Friday.
ready, but I can't guarantee it.
So it's 10 to 4 on Wednesday and Thursday. And Monday and Tuesday. I'm supposed to be closing.
Can you go at all
And
this week? You can't go at all.
What's,
I shouldn't even be here tonight.
Yeah,
anybody free on Friday?
Yeah.
You're free
I'm
Friday?
available Friday. I
I'm
don't
free
work
Friday.
all right, so we got 3 of us Friday and we get somebody else or we don't. All right, what time Friday?
Name it, I'm free the whole day.
9, 10, something like that.
All right,
I'm
Just
great in
a-
the morning.
Huh?
I'm
Okay.
great in the morning since the day goes on and I
okay,
go
So
downhill.
if you go down there during operating hours, you go to the trailer and you sign in, you have to sign in.
okay.
I totally understand that, yeah. What's a good time for you?
Oh, yeah,
Because
what's
figure
good for
that-
you on
There's a pit
Friday?
operator there, 7 to 3:30, 5
Okay.
days a week, so I don't care when you go down there.
I just
If you
figured your
just go
trucks
down
would.
there when they're open, you sign in and make sure that everyone knows you're there.
Yeah.
All right, well, when would you be there to meet with us, or you or your son?
You let me know when, or just give
All
me a
right.
call, or
If we did 3:30, would that be off your clock and,
well, yeah, Devin's still there and working late till 4, you still have to sign in.
yeah, there's stuff to sign in?
Why 3:30? Why so late? What, 9 o'clock?
All right,
Do in the morning, my day goes.
okay, 9 AM, and can you meet us there?
Yeah.
Show us around, all right, we'll show up 9 AM,
Bring them out,
It's this Friday.
excuse me, would you
bring
say?
them out.
Bring them, yes, we will bring them back. We will definitely, all right, it's not gonna be easier if we wait until December. All right, that's good, that's good. The, starting back in August, I think the callers in July asked for a letter of explanation. As to what their permit, required of them. I wrote, a letter. Did you guys all get, you guys all got copies of it?
It's the last page in your packet.
Oh, last page in the packet. All right, I wrote a letter. August, what, I wrote a letter. Yeah, explaining it, and it's a general, yeah, yeah, they can, and you can give, anybody in the audience a copy.
After we're done with this letter, I just have a question to ask Rex about the, wetland violation.
That's in the past.
That's in the
That's
past. Thank you.
That's not a current.
Okay, then that's, my question's answered.
Yeah, so I penned this, and you will know, it's very broad and general, it's just quoting things in our ordinance, it's quoting things in the RSA, it's wordy. It's not a bullet point by point, basically just saying you need to comply with our ordinance. I ran it by, our town attorney Laura, and she didn't have a problem with us giving them this kind of a letter. It's basically saying you need to comply with our ordinance, be in compliance with any state or federal regulations. Uphold conditions specifically noted in the vote taken by the board and written in the permit, i.e. excavation of the next 5 years be limited to a 10-acre portion of the site east of the delineated wetland area. And any comments you made at public hearings. Familiarize yourself with the regulations, review the records of the hearing, be sure the commitment made to the town. And you can ask us anytime for any clarifications, and we look forward to working with you to make sure the project proceeds in a positive fashion. Issues may come up and you agree that we're going to work on them. And we have an obligation to make sure the project proceeds prudently and within the scope of approval. As we serve not only you, the applicant, but the community as a whole. Editorial comment, earth excavation is heavily regulated industry with complex issues involved in order to protect the environment while at the same time respecting individual rights, surrounding neighbors. Presents challenges for the board and applicant and so forth. And we intend to communicate, work together well under the terms of the permit and pertinent regulations. And we look forward to proceeding in a collaborative approach. It's more or less an intent to work together and make sure that the project proceeds under the permit issues and any regulations. It's setting a tone, hopefully, for the future to be able to openly work on issues and make sure things proceed. So, are you okay with that, this letter? Yeah, okay. Is the board okay with the letter? Do we want to make a?
I make a motion, we adopt the letter and have it officially sent.
Okay,
I second.
second, any questions?
Move it.
All right, yes. Everybody says
Aye.
yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if that helps you in wanting to know, but it's just kind of a an indication, just an attitude to go forward into the future. And it basically said, I think what needs to be said. All right, the only other thing, we've been getting a lot of calls on short-term rental questions.
What?
Short-term rental questions. People twice, back to back, in 1 week. We're thinking of buying this house, we found it on listed at a realtor's place, and we're thinking of buying it. It's on a back street in a neighborhood. And we're thinking of renting it as a short-term rental. Airbnb, Airbnb. And so my response, and we do need to endorse a policy or a philosophy here. You know, the both of them, I said, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, and I checked with the local government center, the planning board does not have jurisdiction over apartment buildings or short-term rentals or you know, the use of the house. We do not dictate dictate that. If you're buying a single family house on some street, you can own it as an owner occupant, or you can rent it out. I mean, it's nothing to do with us.
I can tell you, Bonnie, my home over in Vermont, and it's really, really strict. When you are a member of the Airbnb, very strict. I'm not allowed there. It's watched. It's, the Airbnb Association. And they have a rating sheet, not only for the person who's renting, like, I don't host, I have somebody independent. And the cleaning, the maintenance, the restriction, and then also about the people that are renting. If they have done something that wasn't, they get written up
Yeah.
and they can actually be blocked. So they're really, like I said, I can't even go to the house and enter the garage, for example, which is kind of not
Right.
really. So they really do have good regulations. Sometimes that's better than having somebody come in and renting for a year or two, and then having it just get really bad, messy, and so.
Couldn't the short-term rentals go into the master, the town plan?
Yeah, I mean, that's
What,
one.
to the master plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's tons of things we can put in there. It is a trend, the dome camping things and the tree houses and the unusual, vacation, opportunities,
The other two on that
they're
is they may not
coming
be
at us.
odors.
Well, I have the Mitchell House, as most of you all know, the Mitchell
Yeah.
House, and I use that as a rental Airbnb.
Yeah.
I have a full-time winter rental and then Airbnb in the summer.
Yeah.
And like you said, there are tight regulations that
They're
I
very tight.
Right?
have to follow and adhere to, but I also live right next door to it, so
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
if they're coming before the board, I think I have to
There are some owners, that-
excuse myself from it for conflict of interest because
there's some owners that aren't as responsible.
Well, it's the future direction of things. It's something to think about and talk about, because it does compete with like your business, a regular
Yeah.
traditional motel.
Oh, I agree.
like
I'm
this-
with the same, if people can do what they want with their property,
Yes,
don't disturb mine with
exactly.
excessive noise and things like that.
it's something to think about. The answer I gave to them is it's not a subdivision, it is not a planning board matter. We do not have zoning, we do not.
I think something with the ski lodge, the old colony this summer,
Yeah,
which they're not, I don't think they were an official Airbnb.
No, they were.
And
they're a club, like, they're a
yeah,
membership
but
club.
that's something that would be,
I believe their tax status is a private membership. club.
Yes, I know it's a
Yeah.
membership club, because I know.
I think it was
two or three
under-
people
I
in
used
there.
to belong, so I
Oh, you
know
used to
what you're talking
belong.
about, so.
It's not a $28 paid cash.
But the other question you have to ask is, we already have these entities in the town. Can we regulate or re-regulate entities that are already in existence, or are they grandfathered? Or would they be grandfathered from our control? So that's the other thing you gotta look at.
They probably grandfathered, anything existence grandfather. So, it's just, I basically said, well, it's not the planning board matter. If I was you, I would go to the selectmen and make sure, there isn't something there. Obviously, if you're changing the exterior dimensions in any shape, form, or manner, you need to go see the building
Building code.
inspector. Building code, if you're turning it into 3 apartments or something, you've gotta go see the building code, the fire department and everything, and the
Yeah,
lighting,
especially
smoke
fire.
detection and all of that business. There may be other places within the town that you should go ask. Is there anything you need to do for them? But as far as the planning board is concerned, we deal with the division of land. Not interiors
Not
of buildings.
dwellings, yeah.
So, we need to have a policy and say the same thing, and that's just an example of something that's coming at us, something different that we're going to have to wrestle with.
I think that's a
Oh.
good policy.
All right,
It's important that we have something in writing that we say to people though, because
Right.
it's important that we give the same
Same
information
answer.
fairly to anyone who asks.
right.
I think the way Bonnie just had an explanation of it, why don't you just write it up for us, Bonnie,
Okay.
and we'll bring it up at the next meeting.
All right, we'll write up the explanation that we're gonna give out, because I bet I've been asked it 5, 6 times, twice, like back to back. In a day apart, okay, I will do that. And that's the best thing to do, so we're giving consistent information. Why don't we, skip over the budget for now
Good.
and hear from the public to see if you guys have anything you want to ask us or talk to us about or whatever. John, do you have something? Okay. Rex?
No.
Sherry? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. You do need to adopt the budget, and you were doing some calculating there.
And I was just trying to figure out, basically, the secretary roughly runs us $900 to $1,000 a year, so. And that's already part of our total wages in the planning board.
Yes, yeah, we got enough money for our
So
secretary.
that was my only concern, is that we had enough money.
We got enough money for our secretary.
Do we
can-
know how much the North Country Council would cost for their membership? And then is it the membership, and then anytime we ask them to do something would be additional?
Yes. We had it in the budget for years and years and years. Then we felt, now it's not worth joining.
So we've been a member before.
Yes, for years. And we dropped out maybe 5 years ago because we didn't have anything going on. We didn't need them for anything. We didn't call them up for advice. We didn't need them to draft anything for us. So we just said, we're not gonna join. That was about 5 years ago. Well, I just found out last year, apparently the selectmen thought they were worthwhile, so they joined. Unbeknownst to us, they
The
just,
selectmen joined?
the selectmen joined. So I think my attitude is, well,
Let them
they
keep paying.
loved it, they believed in it, and you can see that they have things they can help us with, as we're trying to work on all these ordinances, and we're trying to deal with, our future. They might be helpful to us, but, as you said,
can't-
it needs to be
You can't put
our
them both,
plan.
so you can't have the select and the town plan.
We can use them, I mean, so long as the selectmen is putting the money in their budget, let them put it there.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, let the selectmen pay for it.
And
we'll
let
use
them
it.
pay for it, and we'll
well, you
use
know,
it.
in the end, it's us anyway.
Are they-
taxpayers.
Yeah.
Currently a member of selectmen,
Yes,
so then we already are. a member.
we are a member.
So
Right.
then
Town-
we
the
can't
town
be-
is-
Yes, yes, town is a member, it's a town membership. And the town is a member, but we'll write down the question to make sure they put the dues in there.
I just checked on their website and it's not listed what the dues are, please to call them if you want to know.
Yeah, it's thousands, it's not 500 or something, it's not a lot of thousands, but it's
Like 3 or 4.
3 or 4,000.
Mhm.
But if the selectmen are. currently
Yeah,
paying
let's
for it,
ask, let's ask the selectmen if they put it in. Because they may be useful to us, I mean, it's gonna be our plan, but we might need technical advice and.
Well, I would think we'd all be under that same umbrella. Number one, that it's the town thing.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
local.
Yeah.
we should be under their umbrella.
I would think so.
Yeah. So you're happy with the budget, with that,
Yeah, under those conditions, yeah.
okay,
One other suggestion I would make is because we've used legal counsel and we haven't used consulting fees. is we might want to adjust those two
Yes,
numbers
let's.
and bump up the legal a little bit and bump down the consulting a little.
Yes. What do you think?
Okay,
So it still comes in at 11,
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
keep it 11,000.
nothing in there for Christmas party, huh?
Let's.
Yeah, no, we don't get a salary.
Go up to two,
so you want to make it two and three?
2 and 3, yeah.
Okay.
You realize,
Used up almost the 4,000 of
okay,
it.
let's make
I make a
2,000.
motion that we increase the legal expenses to $2,000 a year and lower the consultant expenses to $3,000 a year.
All right, there's a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, we can't have a Christmas party because we have a quorum. here. We just can't have one. We should go 3 by 3 for a party, but we can't. John?
How serious are you folks about reviewing your master plan between now and election day?
Meantime.
Because if you're gonna engage the public, you're probably gonna have to have
Yeah,
public hearings, you're gonna
yes,
have to have
yes,
space
yeah.
for, it, you're gonna have to have
Yeah.
additional admin stuff, you're gonna need additional paper to print stuff on, you may wanna take and factor that into your budget.
Well, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
That's a good suggestion.
We may want to, you're absolutely right, and we, all of these things we just talked about, there could be printing costs and stuff. And drafting costs, you're absolutely right, so do we wanna make operating expense 2,000? And, that would be interesting, and consulting 2,000 apiece.
I make that motion that we increase operating expenses by 1,000 to 2,000 and reduce the consulting fees to $2,000.
All right,
Yeah, I think that.
second that, any other changes to the budget?
Thank you.
Thank you, that was, real good to point out, we've got these many documents in the works, it will be expenses. All right, all in favor of the new budget?
Aye.
Aye. Good, thank you. Anything else to come before the meeting? This is a record breaking one, longest one we've had in a long time, but look at all we did.
When's our next meeting?
A lot of good stuff. December Monday, 12th, or whatever it is.
Okay, I'm gonna have to Zoom that.
Okay,
Doctor's appointments on Tuesday.
and you're gonna be gone. You're gonna be here.
I'll be on Zoom.
It'll be on Zoom. Oh, you.
I'll be traveling back.
Problem, we have to have 4 of us in the room. I'll be here.
Oh, you can't be on Zoom?
You certainly can participate, but you have to have,
There have to be a minimum of 4 actually.
Four.
I will not be
And-
physically present.
you 2 won't be, I will be here. You won't be, 3 won't be. Oh, brother, here we go.
Can we change the date of the meeting to sooner than the 12th?
That would make it worse for me.
That would.
I would be
And
back.
Bonnie.
That would make it what?
Make
that
it
would make it
worse.
Or worse?
Yeah,
I'll be back by the 14th.
All right.
okay, how about having it on the 19th? Let's make a vote to have our meeting on the 19th. Can we all do the 19th?
Oh, yeah, that's my birthday, sure.
Okay,
I'll be 79.
Think so? I got-
wow, that's amazing.
What is? I lived that
79.
long. If my mother heard that I lived this long, she'd be amazed too.
That's the 19th
19th,
on Christmas week.
will that work for you? We're gonna have to, if everybody in this room.
I know.
Maybe. My kid has a doctor's appointment in Boston in the morning and I just have to be back by, or he'd still be down.
On the
Okay.
19th, yeah. Well, let's shoot for that, because obviously the, 12th is,
Yeah, I should be able to. get
and we're
back
on
by
such a roll, we just can't go back to the no
No,
forum again.
no.
Holy cow.
I'll make sure I'm back.
All right, let's,
So it's on the 19th
19th
at
is
6
six.
o'clock.
all right, anything else we need to do? or anything anybody wants to say?
I got it.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second. All in favor? I've never heard anybody vote against adjournment.
Thank you for that
Thank-
suggestion.
Yes, and thank you for coming, everybody.